Hi, this is John with Wisdom for the Church. Thank you for tuning into the channel. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe and drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and it makes a massive difference. And as always, thank you for watching. Welcome back to Wisdom for the Church. I am here with a familiar face. If you've watched some of the channel before, Jeff Wright, a pastor in Tennessee, husband, father. How you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me back on. Always honored to be asked. So it's good to see you and good to have a chance to sit down and talk.
Yeah, man. And you're back in the kitchen, I see. So back to the original spot.
Yeah, this is the luxury life of a podcaster right here, man. Got some nice laundry basket tower here. Got probably some laundry detergent up there. Maybe it's pretty elite.
It's the class that people of this channel have come to expect. I'll tell you that. So you're right in line.
To deliver. Yeah.
These awesome. Are actually not even real books behind me. It's just a background to make me look somewhat intelligent. So
I need to do that. I need to set up somewhere with a bunch of books. That'd be great. I mean, I don't know if you're like this, and I won't spend too much time on this. I'm terrible about reshelving my books, so my library at church looks like a chaos monster hit it, because really one did, you know.
Oh, there we go. The Jeff decimal system. Not exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody be like, "Can I borrow this book?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Eventually.
Yeah, that's when I find it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah. We are going to talk about, one, the election, two, some things going on in Christian news, but I am sad to say that Trump won the. No, I'm just kidding. I'm really happy.
No, you're not.
Yeah, of the two candidates, and I like a lot about them, don't like everything, but yeah, overall reaction to Donald J. Trump rising from the ashes to become the 47th president of the United States.
Yeah, I'm so very thankful, man. It feels like a reprieve. Look, I mean, there's all the obligatory qualifiers. He's got to get his head and his mind and his heart straight on abortion.
Yep.
Yeah, it's depressing. It probably helped him get elected, but it's too high cost on that. So, yeah, he's got to get right on abortion. We've got to push him that way. But what a gift. And, you know, he's been trotting out these proposals. And I think that's the Elon difference. You know, the Trump we're getting now, based on what he's saying he wants to do, it's not just drain the swamp and sort of these broad platitudes, you know, like.
Yeah, build a wall, drain the swamp.
Right. Obama did some of that with like, it's going to be hopey and changey and,
sure,
you know, whatever. But these specific proposals he's giving are incredible. Department of Agriculture, you know, strategy for actually dealing with the deep state. I couldn't ask for better on every issue but abortion. And so, again, I'm really thankful. We didn't just get the lesser of two evils, like we got a mitigated good. And I'm really thankful for it.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at it from just we've talked about this probably a little bit offline, just a political perspective, ignoring, you know, how this is very easily based on the platform of the left and what they stand for regarding humanity, what they stand for regarding man and woman, what they stand for regarding what the role of the government is, all these things, massively lesser of two evils. We're going in assuming that. We're not really going into that. We're just assuming it in this conversation. Politically, the greatest comeback, I think, in American political history, unless you see like a tall guy with a beard and a top hat start walking around. Like,
right.
It's insane. He was done 3 years ago. Like, he was kicked off the internet. Like, the internet.
Absolutely, man. It's wild. I don't know exactly like the human causes to point to, but one of them has to be the left went so unchecked, full throttle, insane, that it really is kind of one of those deals like when you read in Roman history where they exile Cornelius or whatever, and then they're like, please come back, you know. And again, on every topic but abortion, he's substantially better. We've got a better version. He seems to have actually learned and is listening to the right people. I saw that Kushner's not even going to be in the administration this year. I mean, or this time around. Everything other than abortion, it's just home run. Praise the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. And part of that, I think, does come down to I heard, a Rush Limbaugh quote, like, I guess it would have been before he died. But, he said something along the lines of, like, you, meaning those who supported Trump and those who are generally conservative, like, MAGA, for what it's worth, will not die because you were before Trump.
Yeah.
Trump took advantage of
Mhm.
sentiments, and the left would say, oh, racist, sexist, horrible sentiments. No, like, care about country, care
Right.
about just one's country meaning something. Sentiment,
Natural affections. Yeah.
natural affections that have been brewing for, years and years, and he saw it and took advantage of it. But I think the political will of the people is also what has steered, I think, Trump to be more maybe in tune with the pulse this time around.
Yeah.
And
Do
hopefully
you
that
listen to the Ruthless podcast? Is that on your radar?
no.
So I can't even tell you who the guys are, but they're one of the political podcasts I'll listen to occasionally. And they were the first one I heard to make this point. But he said the host said he bet on young men. He didn't spend any money trying to convince wine moms in the suburbs, kind of the awful, the affluent white female liberal.
Yeah.
They're going to hate him forever. He spent very little energy trying to convince them. He just told young men, "You're frustrated with the way the world is. I want to give you a future. I want to try to help you with the things you're seeing." And they said, if this doesn't pay off, this was pre-election. They'll be the most neglected constituency in the country because they were already on the left,
Hmm.
sort of seen as the reason for all the troubles in the world, right?
Sure.
But Trump bet on them. It was a smart bet. I think JD Vance is a representative of that bet, and Barron probably had
True.
a
Yeah.
hand in that. And I'm just thankful because it seems like a symptom of this sort of reassertion of the natural law that men are good. They bring certain things to society that are irreplaceable. If you demonize them, things get worse. If you encourage and edify them, things get better. And I mean, it's all protean right now, right? We don't know what's actually going to come out of this,
Sure.
but I'm really thankful for the early returns.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, that gets a little bit into part B of kind of just the presidency and Congress as well. There is, like you said, a reprieve. This is overall good news, a trend in a political direction that is far more in line with God's law of what a government should be and what the citizens should expect of its government.
Yeah.
So we ourselves as Christians find ourselves in a place that I would argue we have more of a voice in some ways on a political kind of side of things. But the question is, what now? So things are a little better. We don't forget the basic things as Christians. So
Sure.
with that in mind too, like, what is a battle plan for, you might say, young men or young women, just Christians who see, okay, it's better that he's in office than her, but what now?
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot because if it's a reprieve, it's an opportunity. And I put some of this stuff on Twitter. So if anybody's seen that, forgive me for repeating myself. I think the first thing to do is to self consciously, regularly express gratitude to God for that. I think maybe the core American sin is ingratitude.
Hmm.
We were given a continent and a Christian heritage that was unprecedented in history. And I think we became very, we just assumed that was how it was always going to be. And so, thanking God not so much for Trump in and of himself, but just that he gave us the better version, that he was pleased to give us this reprieve. I do think we need to cultivate gratitude and express that. The black pill part of me, and I'd be curious what you think about this. Let's take it for example, the announcement that Massey is going to run the Department of Agriculture.
Mhm.
I couldn't have picked anybody in the country. Then he went and said, well, we're going to add Joel Salatin as an advisor to the department. It got better and better. But here's the thing: if you're a entrenched bureaucrat in the Department of Agriculture, you realize 80% of your coworkers are going to have to go. The Massey's vision for that department is going to be, it's going to require career bloodshed,
Mm.
a house cleaning. And that's happening at every level of the government. And so the kind of anxiety I have is that they're not going to go easy.
Mm.
You think about the Department of Agriculture. I don't know what resources they have. They like to pick on the Amish and some of those things, but you start getting to like the FBI, the CIA, letter agencies we don't even recognize. He's talking about killing the Patriot Act.
Oh yeah. Wow.
There's a whole host of incredibly powerful people that are going to have no compunctions about doing everything necessary to stop this.
Sure.
Yeah, it's November. Even when we get to January, um, there's going to be an Empire Strikes Back kind of move.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what to do other than just recognize it is coming. I'm thankful that, again, Elon, it looks like his legal team's better, but these are people who aren't constrained by legal limitations, right? I mean, our foreign policy tells us that. And so looking for the counterpunch would be the second thing I would say. Not being surprised when it lands, figuring out, okay, we need to swing back. I mean, do you think that's,
Yeah.
am
I
I
mean,
being too
no, that's.
paranoid?
I don't know if I could. I don't know if I could blame someone for having a little bit of suspicion when things could go south. Given I don't know the last 4, 5, 6 years of our nation. So
Right.
the black pill thing, yeah. I mean, I've heard that term before, and I understand what it means. But yeah, I mean, to be naive, you don't want to be naive. And
Yeah.
I think that's you said the word. I think you said opportunity. I think that's what comes to mind
Mhm.
in terms of because you know, a lot of stuff is going to be up here on the national level, and we should care about that. And international level, we should care about that. We
Sure.
should care about things going on nationally, regionally, and locally, and probably maybe in a reverse order though, like start local, and then the more that you can control and the more that you can be about, like start there. But of course, there's the basics of the Christian life that we have to dig into, not dig out of. Keep chugging along in staying in the word and staying around believers and challenging believers and gathering with believers on the Lord's day and living the Christian life in a way that's hospitable, that cares for others, all these types of things, like the spiritual disciplines. Make sure that you're at a place that you partake of the Lord's Supper, all of these
Here,
types of
here.
things.
Yeah.
But the word opportunity and the word build come to mind, and that starts to me at a small level. Uh, and I had a guy. There's a guy at my church, and he's a classic reformed looking guy, massive, has a big beard, wears kind of cool looking shirts sometimes. But he said basically, this is a window. It's a window,
Yeah.
and if
Right.
there's any reprieve, there should be, I think, in each one of our individual lives, maybe take an inventory right now and think, what can I be a part of building, or what can I build? And maybe it's just the basics.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just the basics of cultivating your own holiness and doing things with the believers that are at your church. And naturally, you're going to do things together. You're going to care for one another. I've had, I know people that have offered to, house me when my kind of like lease situation changes. Like, and that's just believers caring for me, like things like that, just where it's like
Awesome.
whatever is in your purview. And I think, he used the term too. I think alliances, that sounds kind of battly, but we are in a spiritual war. That's the reality of the life that we live in, Ephesians 6. So looking opportunistically, what I learned, I feel like, in the last 6 years, just regarding the presidency change, was you know inflation has shot up the last 4 years, and when we were in, I would argue, some economically better times, I functioned as if that was going to last forever,
Sure.
rather than seeing the fact that, oh, like this is an opportunity to maybe wisely and with an open hand trust the Lord, try to set some things in place,
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
where actually, if times go south, you have built up some savings, or you've prepared. Basically, there's a lot in Proverbs
Right.
preparing. Like maybe tangibly, like one thing could be, if someone has the financial means, like maybe taking a look at the market and seeing, would it be a good time to buy or, sell a house? And if I do buy a house, like, what might I do with that? Could I be someone who provides for someone who needs a room or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
But builds, think of it as a window.
Yeah,
uh,
ambition, ambition and aggressiveness, I think are really
Take
called
ground,
for. Yep,
take
take
ground.
ground. Yeah, and that's really the third thing that's on my mind. It doesn't sound like taking ground, but it's taking ground back. Um, the people who were repudiated in the election aren't going to go away. They're not going to say, "Well, okay, you know, we took our licks. It's our time to move into the sunset." They've got, and for the feds listening, they've got to be run to ground in every nonviolent way.
Mhm.
DEI departments, CEOs, local politicians, bad pastors,
Mm,
they've got to be chased out.
sure.
Um, Conservatives have a real hard time wielding power. It feels like mean, I guess, not nice.
Yeah,
But in this situation, the kind of the classic example of Adam in the garden is, what should he have done? He should have cut the snake's head off, right? He should have done
that's
what was like
compassion
Adam's.
for his wife.
Yeah, exactly. And so again, I'm not calling for any kind of violence, but I'm saying you're out and you're never allowed back. If there's some kind of repentance and growth, we'll put you on the kitchen staff, basically. But uh, we just can't leave the seeds in the ground. It's got to be rooted up. And then that is, the fourth thing is what you just said. Like, this is an opportunity. I don't know what all those things look like, but
Same here.
houses and wives and babies and businesses and running for local office, um, leading congregations, this is an open door to do that. I think that we probably on social media know people who are going to serve in the administration. Great. They need to. We should encourage them, put wind in their sails. Whatever your scale version of, I'm going to do the thing, I'm going to take the risk, I'm going to go for it. And, I'm not doling out financial advice. You were right to say, I maybe need to make sure I'm laying up something in my larder in case hard times actually do show up. Absolutely. But can't be done from a retreatist mindset. This is the time, like you
100%.
said, take ground. It's time to do it.
Yeah. It's time to do it, man. That is it's exciting times too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
My wife, we've got a bunch of kids, and I'm always like, hey, one more, one more. The age window's still open, but barely. One more, one more. And I don't think she was all that serious, but she said, I'm so optimistic. Maybe we ought to have another baby. And I was, I don't think that's coming, but
Okay.
that's the kind of thing we need to see.
Sure. Yeah. And do it, depending on what you're doing, obviously. Do it with your brothers,
Sure.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, local church can't be replaced. And now's the time to be like, okay, I guess one of the things that I've been doing on social media is pointing out that there are going to be bad guys who rebrand because they're fundamentally PR managers and they're going to see the wind shifting. I kind of want to leave the door open. If you're repentant, man, there's all kinds of grace upon repentance. Rebranding, that looks like a guy who's setting up to betray us again in the future. And so you got to be wise, but
Mm.
it's got to start with a local church vision and a local community vision. And then just start, working up from there. Household, church, local community, and then see what you can get done.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see what the Lord has next, couple months even, but the
Yeah,
next 4 years.
yeah.
There's no guarantee.
Advance after that, man. I mean,
Yeah.
let's have a family tree here politically, because again, if they get right on abortion, you couldn't really pick better executives to have. So
Yeah. Yeah.
long live the president.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess we'll move on. Well, this, one thing my channel isn't is news of the Christian day kind of a thing.
Yeah,
I've come up with a few videos before, like I did a Rick Warren one time, a couple of Stephen Furtick ones, but they're kind of few and far between. But one thing that you and I will probably talk about some is just like maybe some more major stories that I've seen or you've seen within Christianity, mostly in America. And the one I wanted to start with, and I wanted to see kind of if you've caught wind of this one. the details are sort of hard to pin down, but the Joel Webbon of Right Response Ministries kind of, for lack of a term, story that went about like 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
about a week ago, and I'll describe what I was able to garner in terms of like what was presented as what happened, and you can fill in any details if you have followed it. So Joel Webbon, a pastor in Texas, has a fairly large YouTube channel. He had been uh, pressured to discipline a church member of his who I guess privately had shared a Holocaust meme. I'm not exactly sure what was on the meme, to be honest. Somehow, it was shared with someone who was like knew the guy, and then that person, I think, shared it more publicly. Joel, from what I could just garner online, he had been and has been clear that based upon speaking with the member, that the member is not actually anti-Semitic. He does not hate Jewish people, but he just has some ideas that maybe we're not told the full story of World War II, and we're only told it from like, there's only one kind of bad seed in World War II, and that's the Germans. And so Joel, from what I could tell, he was spoken about as someone who therefore is peddling in like some sort of anti-Semitism, like he is okay with it, or he seems to, garner that crowd, whatever. There was a video put out on him about Joel on Eschatology Matters, a channel that I guess has some followers, and then at least a couple of well-known names, James White and Doug Wilson, brought up concerns with Joel Webbon. So there's more details in there, but wanted to get your thoughts first. Like, had you followed that, heard about much of that, like thoughts on Joel?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good summary. Joel's a friend. We don't talk personally every day, but we keep in touch. And I saw this story from like seed form, like way back when it first became a thing. And man, I think probably there's some people out there who think I'm pugnacious. I like to fight. I don't. I don't like controversies in my tribe. Uh, I want fathers leading us. I want a band of brothers, working together. And honestly, I get tired of watching my heroes die. I spent through critical race theory, COVID, men that should know better, that I've authentically learned more about the faith from, just make the worst decisions, double down, become hostile to those who'd seen more clearly. And this thing has distressed me. I've been on Joel's podcast a couple times. I've been on Eschatology Matters way back in the day. They're on Fight Laugh Feast. I've got friends who are involved in that. I'm rooting for Moscow. And so to see them all turn on each other with Joel at the center, who I think has handled this faithfully. I mean, the meme, I've seen the meme. It's edgy right-wing stuff. It's not something I'm going to share, but James White basically said the guy needed to be put under church discipline. And that's wild. It's outlandish. It's way out of the purview of a guy who runs a YouTube channel like James and is involved in his own local church, but it's just radically inappropriate. I do think Joel has handled it well with that member. I think he's handled it as a faithful pastor. That he would have pressure coming on him from this. And it seems like that pressure is coming with the assumption that Joel is like a hidden bad actor who's saying one thing in public and doing something different in private.
Yeah.
It fails the test of love, right? Love assumes the best. And that love is to be aimed at fellow believers. The thing that was really distressing about the video you mentioned, what came out later, is Joel and that guy had talked. His name's Tobias. He's from Germany. They talked. He knew he was telling things about Joel that were not true based on his own conversation with Joel. And Joel had the wisdom to record that meeting. I'd messed up. I assumed that probably it had happened like on what we're doing here, where you're on a recording software and it says, hey, this is being recorded. I think Joel recorded it with some kind of third-party resource, but he was wise to record it.
Yeah.
And what's the best antidote to a lie? Well, it's the truth.
Yeah.
And so once he's able to distribute that, people start having to do their retractions. Eschatology Matters did it right. They initially were kind of,
It's a big point. They took down the video.
Right, but then they offered a full-throated apology. Doug, James, again, guys that I really look up to, have just taken a different path, and I don't know the right language without sounding effeminate. It just bums me out.
Sure.
They should do better, and they know better, and they've been subject to these kind of false accusations as well.
Yeah,
they should know.
Probably a long list.
Yeah,
for them.
You can, right? Yeah. And Doug literally has like a part of his website that says "My Controversies," and he's been through this. Why chip in on one? But I guess the last thing, I know I've been kind of monologuing there.
Sure. The
Lord has vindicated Joel, not just with the recording, but there's these other cringy kind of podcasters or something. They're on social media. And the accusation from Tobias was basically like, you're actually with those guys, you just won't say it in public. But we released Joel, William Wolf, James Silverman, Dusty Devers, and I released their statement on Christian nationalism finally in final form. Well, immediately these people that are supposed to be deep-seated allies of Joel started attacking him.
Yeah.
And so he's being attacked for being in line with these guys, and they're the ones trying to destroy him. The narrative can't be sustained. And the Lord was pleased to kind of bring all that into the light, and I'm really thankful for that. I just hope my heroes will take a step back, do some introspection, and come back to the table appropriately.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm sure he's he gets attacked a lot. That's one thing I've definitely noticed.
He's had protesters at his house. This is all going down right when he's welcoming a new child into their family. He's got to care for his wife.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just gruesome.
Sure.
But again, the Lord was faithful, and in a time frame that doesn't always happen, right? Like and sometimes in history, the person has to die before they're vindicated. The Lord let Joel be vindicated much more quickly, and I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah. And I mean, again, from what I've gathered, Joel has actually spoken to that member and understands the perspective from what the member had stated. No, I do not hate Jewish people. I'm not anti-Semitic. I just think I have some different views on there's only like one villain basically in World War II. And then I think Joel's counsel was basically like, okay, understand that. Please don't share a meme like that again. It's just not wise.
Yeah. I mean, Joel has handled it really well with a guy who wasn't in any kind of objective sin.
Yeah.
It could have possibly been a clue to some kind of sin, but that's for Joel and his elders to work out, not Alpha and Omega Ministries or Moscow from 1,000 miles away. And again, it's just the craziest thing. Honestly, the craziest thing isn't in this deal that the guy lied knowing that he was lying. That's pretty wild. But there started being this push online for like an ad hoc internet council to evaluate Joel.
Yeah.
From Reformed Baptists.
Yeah.
And they're trotting out the London Confession saying, it proposes something like this. Well, it proposes nothing like an internet ad hoc celebrity tribunal.
Yeah.
And my response
to those somewhere. So
it's wild. And I said, can you name a time in the last 200 years when Reformed Baptists have done anything like this? So we're going to break with 200 years of practice over a meme? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Did you pay attention to the Martyr Maid controversy on Tucker? Did that hit your radar?
No.
So Martyr Maid is a guy, Daryl Cooper, got a really interesting podcast, does the longest form of deep dives. His series on Jim Jones is incredible. It'll take you a month to listen to, but it's incredible. Do what?
The cult?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he goes into I didn't realize how much out of the social justice movement Jim Jones had come and why that bought him so much credibility. I mean, it's just the deepest of deep dives. So he's on my radar. Tucker Carlson's on my radar. I listen to him. And they did a podcast where Daryl kind of said the same thing you just did, that he went after Churchill pretty aggressively, but he basically said that we've got this narrative like there's one bad guy. Meanwhile, we're allying with Stalin, who killed more people than Hitler based on objective, the kind of figures that historians don't question. And we've just got to have a more informed and robust understanding of World War II. And he got in kind of conservative political arenas a much bigger version of what Joel just went through, but it's the same core at the heart of it. Like, what are we allowed to say in public about accepted narratives in our culture?
Yeah, because there's an assumption of, I think with all of it, there's with stuff like that, there's always so much smoke going around.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Mm-hmm.
what was he actually saying, basically?
Mm-hmm.
Not what do you think he said, or how did it strike you what he said?
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, that's really what it boils down to. Like
And you're playing internet telephone, even trying to figure out what he said.
Yeah. Which says something probably about all of our need to just like be local first. But
yeah,
it's not like
or let a guy be local. Like let Joel, as the pastor and one of the elders, do what God assigned to him.
Sure. Yeah. The one commentary that came to mind when I was kind of hearing a little bit about it was, one, I think it is pretty obvious based on just his public statements that Joel is not anti-Semitic, that Joel does not carry a hatred for like a group of people just based on their ethnicity. He thinks that, if they are not kissing the Son, if they have not repented and turned to Christ, that they are under God's damnation. But that's, true of every person everywhere. So it's not anti-Semitic to say that, even though our sentiments might, feel a certain way if we hear that. But I remembered when that was happening, like just 3 weeks earlier, I had caught a clip of Joel being interviewed on a channel. It was called Smart Christians channel. And basically,
a good name.
This large channel that's probably has a lot of good content, like was interviewing Joel and basically asking, like, are you racist? And then Joel would be like, no, I don't think I am. And then like, the host would say something and it's like, that's definitely not what I meant there. And I remember like the one that I remember is like Joel had made a comment one time that he bemoans the fact that if he goes on a plane and if the pilot, I think it was either pilot or a doctor, if a doctor is black, or a pilot, maybe it's a pilot, if a pilot is black, he has a question. The reason he has a question, though, is not because Joel is racist and thinks that black people inherently have a just ontological lesser ability to do a certain thing. The reason that he bemoans the fact that he has to think this way is because things like affirmative action and DEI, which are actually both racism applied, exist. So what Joel, from what I can tell, what Joel is bemoaning is, I can't believe I have to think this way, but for some ways I have to think this way because these are real factors. With things like DEI and things like affirmative action, whatever, you have to wonder, unfortunately, if someone who was potentially promoted based on ethnicity or sex in some cases, if they're qualified. And so that's the point I think that Joel was making. But like the host, it just was like over the head. And he would say things like, well, that strikes me like, see, I don't like the way that was said, or like that makes you feel a certain way. And it's like, but that's the problem. It's not about how a statement makes you feel. It's about the content of what the person is trying to say. And I felt like with the whole Joel thing, it was like blown out of proportion very, very quickly. So,
yeah, I mean, in some ways, that's him suffering for being better informed. And, that may, I don't know what your listeners will think, but in recent years, we've seen, the aircraft engineering company Boeing falling on hard times. And a whistleblower said it's because they pursued DEI hiring policies. And so the best engineers wasn't the first concern. It was identity politics categories. I can't remember which school it was who said that, if you're in these minority identity categories, we're going to move you through the program without you having to hit some of the standardized testing benchmarks. If you know those things, you're supposed to use them to evaluate the world, right? But if somebody's not paying attention, you're treated like a monster for just knowing what's true. And I think that sounds like Joel fell into that. Like he's just better informed. He's paying attention more, and he gets crucified for it. It's I don't know how you get around that. But it is a shame that it's a dynamic in our society.
Yeah. 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 I mean, and again, Joel, I'm sure, would admit that he has not been sinless in everything that he's ever said, or even in this situation. But he seems to be one that's fairly quick to repent.
Oh yeah, and I think he's
publicly.
exceedingly gracious to his opponents. I mean, he'll regularly be like, "I just want to be friends. I want you to understand correctly. I'm willing to forget." I mean, just remarkable. It's true for me that there's a maxim. I'm probably going to butcher it, but like, my good favor once lost is nearly impossible to regain. And that's not Joel, man. Joel bends over backwards to accommodate himself, and it's just a shame to watch it happen. So here again, I'm just really thankful the Lord had a quick timetable on vindicating him.
Yeah. To me, the Joel story was significant because, one, I think he has some helpful things to say.
Mm-hmm.
And two, because there's just this larger principle with it all of rushing to judgment when we don't know the full story. When one man speaks, he seems right in a case until the cross-examination comes. Sticking your nose in something that maybe it doesn't, belong in is like, I think it's like grabbing a dog by the ears in the Proverbs. Like, it's just, there's some things there where it's like, yeah, if we don't have all the facts, it's, we don't necessarily have to just believe someone, but don't rush to judgment all the time.
Yeah. And we're both local guys. Presbyterians would have church courts for something like this. Baptists don't. On the whole, sometimes I wish we had courts, but on the whole, I think it's better that we don't. It's more scripturally faithful as a Baptist. I believe in biblical Baptist ecclesiology. That said, I don't blame someone for not knowing they don't have all the facts, right? Sometimes you have to work with what you've got in front of you.
I mean, if you're hearing like, this guy has been off the rails, like 6 years ago, this guy is racist. It's like your instincts are like, well, get him out of here.
Right.
Done. Same thing in the scenario.
But the thing you can know is if you are or are not in a position to have the facts.
Mm-hmm.
Am I close enough to this situation to know that I've gotten basically all the testimony on the record? Is there a way for me to get that if I have some questions, right? Elders exist in the local church. Could I contact somebody? Have I taken those steps to be forthright about it? And that's where it breaks down for me. Like, if you know you live hundreds of miles away, don't weigh in, man. If you feel like you need to know more, it's such a heinous danger, you need to do something. Take a few minutes to make a few phone calls. Send a Twitter DM. Just see if the man, will talk directly to you before you wade in guns a-blazing.
Yeah.
Leroy Jenkins style. It's a shame.
Yeah. And that applies to everything. Like, it's just everything we deal with in life. We have to be able to understand that we have to act quickly in some scenarios. But in other scenarios, just, being a watchful waiter, is a good and sound biblical position to take, because you're not going to crucify someone who's not guilty, which is error and terribly evil.
Well, and the Proverbs you've already quoted exist to teach the church that. When we power past it, it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
So, the people who Joel was supposed to be secretly in line with, who are now attacking him, what I've seen from them that comes across my social media, I don't care for at all. But I'm not. They're just not on my radar. I don't care.
Sure. Yeah.
They're either in a local church that can deal with them, or in judgment they're outside of a local church. If they become a direct threat to me, I'll address it then. But I don't have to.
Sure.
I don't have to pick every fight that comes across my desk.
Yeah. And you don't have to dance for me if I would say, hey, why have you not blocked so and so?
Right.
Whatever. It's like I don't have that jurisdiction. I can assume a little bit better about you. You,
Yeah, for sure.
like you
For
might
sure.
just think you might have them because you want ammo for what people you don't agree with think, or
Mhm.
you might just not care at all and know that I don't have that jurisdiction.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just a generally good idea to not be easily recruited into a mob. So just say no. Like you said, I'm not under any compunction to denounce people I'm told to denounce. If I need to, under biblical conviction, I'll do that, but not because some internet rando said I should.
Yeah, internet randos. That's
Yeah.
great. Okay, so moving on. One thing I wanted to talk about is the Gospel Coalition 25 conference. I thought it was the Gospel Coalition Women's Conference, but it's, I think, co-ed, but it's Gospel Coalition, so probably is kind of a women's conference.
So speaking of trolls that I don't pay any attention to, I haven't seen this. I feel a pit of like trepidation in my stomach. I want to hear the details, but
Oh, you don't know this one? Okay,
no, this is
it's
totally new.
it's more surface level, but Gospel Coalition 25 conference. The tagline or the kind of theme is "Alive Together, Faithful, Living in a Faithless Age." And I just wanted to throw out a few of the names that are speakers or breakout speakers because I actually find it interesting. Break seminar speakers that are not the keynotes but kind of breakout sessions. A couple of those are J.D. Greer and Jen Wilkin, and then two of the keynote speakers are one David Platt and two Alistair Begg. That's the one that was most interesting to me, actually.
Dadgummit, yeah.
So just
Talk
wanted to
about fathers who let you down, man. Dadgummit, Alistair. See, this is the danger of the double down. When he took a prideful response to biblical outrage about bad counsel. And once you decide, not, you don't have, Alistair Begg doesn't have to respond to a woke mob any more than Joel Webbon does.
Mm-hmm.
But he does have to respond to biblical truth. And that's where he failed.
Yeah.
And once you decide, I'm not doing that, you just start moving towards the worst guys. I mean, it's comical that J.D. Greer and Jen Wilkin are going to do a breakout together. In some ways, that's just so appropriate. But Alistair's actually sad. That's just depressing.
Yeah. It says something about, for the most who watch this would probably know something of it. Alistair Begg, I think earlier this year or late last year, advised a church member, I think it was, or radio caller, to basically she needs to attend a transgender wedding, either that or a gay wedding. But I think it was transgender wedding in order to basically just show love and show that that you care. And I believe the biblical response to that question would be absolutely not, because you cannot separate those two things. You can't say, "Oh, I'm here showing love, but I actually don't support it." Attendance to the event is celebrating that event.
Sure.
We don't.
And you don't love anyone by feeding their lies.
Yes.
Right. You don't give a drug addict more drugs because they really want it.
Yeah.
It's just a complete misstep. And the simplest path is to say, I got that wrong.
Yeah. But it's interesting. What's interesting to me about this story, and maybe I'll get your thoughts, is I don't know. I could be wrong. When I've thought of or heard of like Gospel Coalition events or seen blog articles, I don't typically associate Begg with that ministry. And so it's interesting to me what positioning, I guess, Gospel Coalition is taking on that kind of a thing, because it's well known kind of that Alistair has fallen out of some favor with many Christians, but here to pick him up and platform him is Gospel Coalition. What does that say about where they are in their, I guess, platform or faithfulness?
Yeah. I mean, we've known for a while that their approach to faithful Christians is sneering at them for not being on board with fashionable cultural narratives.
Wow.
And it looks like
Begg.
Alistair Begg dovetails with that really quick. And you're going to see, if the pattern holds, you'll just see an acceleration. He'll go from bad to worse. bad company can also corrupt bad character. And it just tends to be a catalyst. The names you're talking about there actually have some reference to what we saw with Trump. Those guys are either going to have to rebrand, or they've been becoming the new mainstream for a while, in the way that Methodism and whatnot did with the fundamentalist modernist controversy. But I'm a young Earth creationist. I don't think there was a time when a bunch of dinosaurs were watching a meteor come to flying through the sky to destroy them.
Yep.
But that's where the Gospel Coalition is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Men like David Platt, J.D. Greer, if they can cynically rebrand, they might be able to find a way to survive it. But the tides represented in the overwhelming mandate of an election that Trump received are the meteor coming to destroy these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds to me like throwing a party on the deck of the Titanic.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
And honestly, it can't happen quick enough. It just can't happen quick enough.
Sure. Yeah. That one's a little bit more cut and dry, I think. I think, those are, I don't really know much about Jen Wilkham, but the three other names that I mentioned, I have paid attention enough to know that they have, Platt and David Greer embraced for, this is moons ago, years ago, they embraced social justice. They embraced that kind of ethnic prejudice. They embraced all of that. They embraced BLM, the whole nine, for years and years, and lectured Christians on they should do the same, even though many of us saw the holes and the prejudice and the partiality that was the main ingredient for what they were saying. So they have been, very much disqualified for years and years from being anyone who can, I could say, like, here's a sound mind who in general is trustworthy. And then Begg more recently. So if anyone's watching, it's like, is this just gossip? Like, no, these are names that have really gone south.
Yeah, it's awful. And I mean, Basham documented in Shepherds for Sale that these guys aren't actually making money directly from Christians, in the sense of, like, their books don't sell very well. Their conferences aren't super high grossing. The dark money coming in is not just funding them, but shaping them. And they're monetarily connected to dark spiritual forces. And again, you can just tell where the train goes. You know where the train tracks are, so you know where the train goes. And unless they jump off by repentance, it's going to be, it's a shipwreck. Just switch metaphors from a train to a ship. The biblical category is shipwrecking your faith, and that's the path they're on.
Yeah. And a little bit of a dark transition. Last but not least, speaking of shipwrecking faith, I think next time we record, I'm gonna sprinkle in a couple positive Christian stories.
Well, we started positive with the election, right? We're just on the decline. We're gonna get it out of our system. We're gonna make America great again. We're gonna make the church great again.
For all of the sad things, there are innumerable, wonderful, and awesome things the Lord does, and the fact that any of us are following Christ, consistently is a miracle.
Amen, brother.
And we can say that as Reformed people, especially, we believe in total depravity. So last but not least, preacher, Bible teacher, seminar kind of speaker. I think he was involved in a seminary as well, like being on the faculty. Stephen Lawson, found a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, that he had for years been in an illicit relationship with another woman, a younger woman, but not an illegal one, someone who was of age. It took two to tango, and they were in sin. And once it was found out and kind of made some news rounds, basically he was, deplatformed from anything he was a part of, any organizations, anything like that, even a church he was a part of, and has sort of vanished, basically. And I saw something that I think is true. I don't know if it's been 100% confirmed, but I think it's actually true. And so, if it's found that, there was missing information, then I will retract this 100%. But from what I've seen, it gets weirder because he was not, according to like Protestia, he was not actually a member of Trinity Bible Church, the church that he was the primary like preaching pastor at. I don't know if you've seen this, but I was kind of blown away by that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's sad and it doesn't. I mean, it kind of makes sense, but thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, to go back to what I said earlier on a couple fronts, that's another one of those deals that just breaks my heart where it's a father, someone that we need older Christians, faithful older Christians to lead well. Um, it makes me just ever more grateful for John MacArthur. Um, but Lawson falling broke my heart. Um, this detail is super weird, and it's one that I just haven't had the heart to dig into. Kind of going back to the Joel thing, like, is there seriously a church out there who's so lax about membership? They do this. They treat, they would put this guy in front of the congregation. The report I did see, the one thing I read on is that he's not even living in their proximity. He may be in Tennessee, um, and so I don't know a ton of details on that. The whole thing feels like an apocalypse, right? An unveiling, and you realize that even the guys you thought were doing it well, it may very well be the case that they're not at all.
Mm-hmm.
And the same celebrity culture that drives Big Eva also has its hands in Mid-Eva, or like the groups that you hope would rise to displace Big Eva because they're more faithful. So this is one I don't have a ton of thoughts on, other than everything that comes to light publicly is awful. And I would love for it to turn out to be something else, but Protestia is really good at doing what they do.
Sure.
And so I don't expect it to turn out that they got it wrong. I expect it to be one of these times where, like, uh, nobody threw their body in front of this. What did you
Yeah.
think was going to happen? That's all I got
Yeah.
on that one, man. I just hate it all. It
It's
just
it.
makes you want to go take a shower and pray.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah. There's I mean, I suppose I wanted to talk about that one a little bit just because it is something that you know he was a very very good teacher of the word, and even had a veneer of actually a holy
Yeah.
kind of countenance about him, these sorts of things. But the one, if this is true, which it seems credible, like he wasn't actually a member, it
Like I said, Protestia is really good at investigating. They're
yeah,
really good at that.
it does highlight something that I can see in my own life in terms of history and sort of deficiencies that I pray the Lord is continually bringing me out of, and that is ecclesiology, the doctrine of the church.
Mm,
I think it was Ravi Zacharias. He's no longer with us, but he was found that he had, I think, some illicit relationships, and that were sexual.
yeah.
And
Very credibly accused. I don't
yeah,
know that it was ever adjudicated in a court of law, but
okay,
credibly accused. And that's not a verdict. I think his family has actually been really staunch that it's untrue. But
mm,
whatever the accusation was enough to destroy his ministry
mm.
and undercut his legacy substantially.
Well, yeah, I appreciate the check there because if it's not something that's been substantiated, I don't want to really repeat it. But the point
Well,
being,
it's a public record matter. I don't think it's a sin to
sure.
talk about it because it's a public matter. But
Well, the point is,
it
yeah, go ahead.
destroys good things. Yeah,
Basically, whether he did it or not, he was gone a lot.
yeah.
Not that it's a sin to just travel, but like ecclesiology, in terms of just this lack of a rootedness and an accountability to a local people, I think is a real issue, even with in good Christians lives. We have a low view of the part of the local church in our lives in many ways, and I think it is shown by like this kind of a story, if it's true.
Yeah, and what you just said holds true either way. It's just not spiritually healthy,
Yeah.
right? And we've talked about this before, but your credentials are local. That's the only kind of credentials that you can actually have that matter in the kingdom. What does your family think about you? What does your local church think about you? Parachurches, by their very nature, erode that.
Hmm.
And they treat the church as if it's some kind of optional thing. It suggests that important work is done outside the local church, and the track record's just not good.
Sure.
The parachurch track record's not great. I'm not saying that they ought to be shut down, but I would say, who has celebrity been good for?
Yeah.
Whose life has been improved by becoming a celebrity? That kind of meme that goes around that says we need to unplug or shut down XYZ until we figure out what's going on.
Mhm.
There probably ought to be some kind of like, your elders are going to take you out of the public spotlight for 3 years on a fixed timetable. You can come back later, but for 3 years, you're just going to be out of the limelight as a check on the degrading effects of being something, like you said, big in terms of popular appeal that's disconnected from the local church.
Yeah. Just a crazy, development there, and
Celebrity sabbatical. We've just come up with the concept of sabbaticals from celebrity status.
there we go. No more, no more. It is interesting getting back to we'll go back to the top. We're done with this one. Back to Trump.
Yeah.
It is a direct, like, opposite effect. If a celebrity endorses someone, I guarantee they have hurt that person's chances. It's incredible. Like, it's just like they're almost always out of touch, almost always laughable in terms of their basic mannerisms. And
Yeah.
it is just like, oh, thank you, whoever it is, Beyonce or Oprah or Lady
For
Gaga.
your revealed wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah, like, as you wear your laughably stupid looking glasses, telling me of how we should live and form a society. I very much appreciate it. Uh,
Right. Right. I mean, the Kamala campaign was torpedoed regularly by that stuff. People are like, oh, Eminem wants to tell me
yeah.
about the
Oh,
morality of my vote.
yes.
Thanks, Eminem. I'm
Thank
really
you.
thankful to hear about that after I listened to you talk about chopping up your wife.
Ah,
That's really important to me, what you think about my ethical voting standards.
yeah, the moral compass has spoken, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just so,
Lunatics.
yeah. But every time, I mean, honestly, I'm just like, keep speaking, Eminem.
Sure.
It helps me. Like,
Yeah. And you can kind of reverse read, right? You can be like, oh, I need to do the opposite.
yeah. But I feel like people, enough people see through it, and it's so laughable that it's like, that's just going to turn more people off.
Sure.
So keep,
Sure.
in some way, it's like, Eminem, keep speaking about,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
all these terrible things are, but you're the moral standard.
Right. Right. I'm really thankful that Lady Gaga is throwing her imprimatur between the people I want to see fail. That
Yeah.
does work out really well for what I hope happens.
I don't know if she particularly actually said, but she'd be the type, basically.
Hmm.
That's the point. She dresses up in a meat suit, does her, show, and then it's like, power to the people or something. And therefore we need to not vote in Trump.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much. Well, yeah, man, I really do appreciate it. Thanks for your thoughts as we kind of delve through some of the news. It's fun.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Always a blast, and appreciate what you're doing. Just keep chopping away at it.
Absolutely. Thanks, brother. See you next time.
All right, man.